guys, welcome to Sopi Studio Umbiamas, conectando Aruba com o mundo via vídeo podcasting. Conectar conosco, compartilhar ideias e histórias para nos inspirar e para nos abrir. Sopi Studio é a plataforma de podcast na Aruba. Follow-nos no Facebook, subscribe no YouTube ou na plataforma de podcast preferido. Escute o podcast preferido que hora e onde está. Sopi Studio, powered by Credits, botiu ideia? Credits educava e prepara abo para vir um empresário exitoso. De business plan, guia personal e préstamo para negócio até com 100,000 forinhos. Vira para mês donho com Credits. Sopi, passa na Sopi para o sop, salada, wrap ou flatbread e mais fresco. Com 7 localidades rond Aruba, nós está cerca de Ibo. Sopi. Swing Masters, organizando events, conferences of weddings, Mister de luz, sound, staging, DJ, trussing of flat screen, Swing Masters está claro para ser boa fiesta éxito. Swing Masters. E agora, Sopi Studio é plataforma de podcast de Aruba, está apresentar.
Sincerely Carolina is powered by Lindy Boutique, Proframe, Gelatissimo, Neutrogena, and Purina.
Hi, happy Monday. Welcome to Sincerely Carolina. I am Carolina and your host. How are you? How was your weekend? I went to the University of Aruba's Women's Day seminar conference. It was really nice, really fun. And I just want to start off by saying that I want to see more men at these events. But anyways, we will talk about this, okay? We will. And but Women's Day is tomorrow, so please do think about what you can do in your environment, at work. Share information, don't just give people cupcakes and whatever, but actually talk about it. And the theme is Break the Bias, which is what we're going to talk about today. Before I continue, I want to say thank you to Sopi Studio for allowing me to talk about whatever I want to talk about. And of course, to the awesome sponsors of Sopi Studio, Subway Credits, and Swing Masters. Thank you. But also to my awesome sponsors. We have Lindy Boutique, Gelatissimo, Neutrogena, and... Why do I always do this? Proframe. Sorry, Mandy. Anyways, yes. Thank you so much. I just realized most of these are women-led businesses. Yay. I like that. And yes, I am proud of you, ladies. Thank you for believing in me too. But yes, without further ado, I have 3 awesome ladies here today. And I do have to say that it took some convincing to get Genna here. Thank you so much, Genna, for being here. And of course, I know Jocelyne and Dr. Paula that y'all are very busy. So also thank you for making the time to come here. But all right, so I'm going to let you introduce yourself. Genna, do you want to go ahead?
All right, my name is Genesis Maduro, mostly known as Genna. I'm a proud alumni of the University of Aruba. I recently graduated last year in the Social Work and Development Department. And currently, I'm working at Highest Aruba. I'm the Gender-Based Violence Advocacy and Training Officer. So I'm very glad to be here today.
Okay, and I want you to explain a little bit about what your job is. You want to do that? Because
so mainly my job is doing capacity building trainings in regards to the topic of gender-based violence. So with different organization, foundation, I also do awareness campaigns, and we are very active for the 16 days of activism that takes part in every in November to December. So it's a new role I took up last year actually also.
Nice.
So I'm in it, and I'm really, excited to also learn from the experts that I have here today in the studio.
Yes. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Jocelyne.
Hi, Carolina. Hi.
So tell us who you are, what you do, and why you're here today.
Okay, well, first of all, as my title says, I feel that I'm lifelong, since my adulthood, gender equality advocate.
Yes.
I have worked in the realm for quite a number of years, and starting actually at the United Nations doing this as a gender policy officer for what was then UNIFEM, the precursor to UN Women, and then also as a gender coordinator for the UN system in Bangladesh to implement the Beijing Platform for Action, which is the most comprehensive framework for promoting gender equality and the advancement of women since 95. That has led to much advancement for women globally, actually including in Aruba. And also I actually work for the government and raadsadviseur for the government on partnerships with international organizations and multilateral organizations mostly, and focusing on sustainable development and small island development states issues. But I am also the chair of not only the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals Commission for Aruba, but also of the Gender Steering Committee that is actually in charge of developing a gender equality policy for Aruba.
Yay!
So I guess that's a very broad introduction.
Yes.
Attest to my passion for this subject.
For sure. I think that, if people didn't know yet, I feel like they know now. But thank you. And for everyone listening, and I hope that when Jocelyne said about the gender policy for Aruba, that you got as excited as I got. But we will be talking about that extensively next week. Okay, so we will touch base a little bit this week, but I just felt like y'all need to know that. Okay, we will have a whole episode on it. Dr. Paula.
Well, the doctor has a little bit been subdued the last years. So, my name is Paula Kibbelaar, and I am already living for 12 years in Aruba. Time flies. I have been invited 12 years ago to work for the University of Aruba. The government of Aruba recruited me to be the founding dean of the FAS, the Faculty of Arts and Sciences.
Nice.
I was allowed to do that for 4 years. And then before I left, they asked me at IPA to work with them, collaborate with them, and I'm still here. So I don't know what that said. But I studied anthropology, cultural anthropology, with an emphasis on multiculturalism and gender. And I actually had my master thesis on the interwovenness of race, gender, and class, and I studied for a year in Amherst. And then I was invited to present my findings at a big conference at MIT, which is in Cambridge.
Nice,
and then I got invited to do my PhD, and that was not anymore in the States, but in Curacao. So I wrote my dissertation on the glass ceiling for tertiary educated women on the Curacao labor market, and I published some publications on it. And then after my PhD, it's like more than 15 years ago in Utrecht, in Amsterdam. I studied in Amsterdam, but I did my defense at University of Utrecht. I worked for a few years in the Netherlands at ministries and consultancies and a research institute. And then the government of Aruba invited me via my professor to work in Aruba. And actually, it is right now, I did some gender stuff, but at the university it was more managerial. At IPA, it's really changing the curriculum, and it is actually finally after 11 years that I am being able to really focus on gender in Aruba. And with this project, that's why you invited me, I hope that I can publish within 2 years an edited book by several authors and thinkers and researchers on the gender relations in Aruba that should be accessible and beautiful to see.
Yes.
Well,
Thank you so much.
That is my hope.
Yes, and I think, I don't see a reason why not. So.
Well, the thing is that when I came to Aruba and was invited to Aruba, I was, where are the publications? And scientifically, it's not very visible what women are doing. And I'm a social scientist. So for me, it is like, why is not So why is it that it's not visible enough? There's no report, there are no visible output. And I see a lot of women in remarkable positions doing remarkable things, but they're not visible enough. And this is I think my assignment still to do in Aruba, to make it accessible, to really be able to make visible what women are doing from a social scientist point of view. But it is something that, which is an assignment that you cannot undertake alone. And I was doubting for years that a Aruban lady should do that and not someone from the neighboring island.
Okay.
But it is just my work. So,
Yes.
yeah, and I hope to collaborate with everybody.
Exactly. And maybe that is the push that we needed, right? Like an outsider eye to come in and see.
Outside within position, yes. Well, you know the situation. Yes.
All right, so let's get into it. So Genna, I'm gonna start with you. And y'all know I don't really like prepare a lot of questions, but I do have some topics that I want to touch, so I will be reading some questions at some point. But Genna, so this year the topic is break the bias. I think it's a really nice topic. I know that you're very passionate about it. But tell us a little bit about that. Like what does it mean and what you see at work and how it kind of relates to Aruba. And I'll let you, Jocelyne, also talk a little bit about that.
All right. So gender bias. When you think about gender bias, you have I always think about how it came to be. So, for example, gender bias is when someone has a preference on one gender more than the other one. And that came to be. Why did it came to be? I always like to start at the patriarchy.
Yes.
So it's a organizational system that makes one gender inferior than the other one. So you can say it started with
You can say it in Papiamento and we'll translate if you want to.
So you bota wak e mujer como menos.
So we basically see women as less.
And the patriarchy also made rules, norms, and types of behavior for two different genders, for the male and the female. And when you look at those roles that women got due to that, and also men, you can see, for example, let's say women can only do house chores. It has changed along the way, thank God, but we still have more to go. So women are destined to do house chores, and men are destined to go to school, get an education in order to provide in the household. So in terms of that, when you see all those differences, the women is overlooked as the weaker gender. And then that creates different stereotypes. So for example, let's say gender bias in the workplace. Paula mentioned the glass ceiling. So in different corporates or different organizations, you have the glass ceiling in which there's no equal opportunity to climb the ladder. So women don't have the equal opportunity to climb the ladder as a man. So that's a way that you can see it.
And also what we are expected to do, right? I mean, even at work, and it's very like super small things. You'll be in a meeting and there are, men and women sitting at the meeting, and then they'll ask a woman like, oh, can you go grab the coffee?
Exactly.
But it's like, the little things. And I think it's nice how they framed it, because I have learned that people can be so unaware of the biases that they hold. So it's hard because you have to make people aware that they exist, that they hold them, and then what to do to change that. So, Jocelyne, you're doing amazing work locally on these issues, right? And you did do an analysis, or the group did an analysis, and we were talking yesterday about so many things, right? And it's not the first time that I see the numbers for Aruba in regards to like women in, you know, authority positions. So like being directors of government organizations, etc. So on paper, I would like to think, you know, that we look pretty good. We have a very equal distribution, but it's in the everyday things, I think, where we are still very behind. Can you tell us a little bit about what you found in these biases?
Sure. I mean, looks are also not necessarily reflect the reality, and it's also biases the way that we look at things, right? So it might seem that, yes, it's true that we have more women in leadership positions, but that doesn't mean that it's equal to men. And that's the difference. And you started exactly at the point. The biases is what you asked me about, right? Well, guess what? Biases indeed are socially constructed through old patriarchal systems, and Paula will talk about it, I'm sure, more as a social scientist and as an anthropologist. And that's why, as well, the international community has set up structures to address these issues and to change. Why? Because it's seen that if you don't have these structures and these normative frameworks to change the way we look at things and to facilitate the advancement of women, that then will create more gender equality. Because the reality is, yes, very often I hear, oh, what about men? I said, you know what? We won't talk about the advancement of women if there was equality in the world. And I'm sorry, the matriarchal system is still there, and that has socialized us in thinking indeed that men have certain roles and are better at things, and that women have certain roles and that women should be in those roles. But guess what? There have been studies now, many studies pointing out that the fact is that these biases, without breaking these biases, will not advance the position of women and actually reach equality. And why is equality so important? Equality is important not just because of the general well-being of populations, but because it makes economic sense and because it's a human rights.
Yes.
Right?
If you have more women participating in the labor market and be productive workers, our societies will flourish more. And not just because women then make greater incomes, but also because women, and especially those of us who choose to be mothers and then are the primary educators of their children and actually helping to change those mindsets, if we also contribute to that, can make a significant change in the future generations. So we as women have an important role. But as you said, why are not men yesterday at the table tomorrow? That's exactly, we are not going to change these biases only with us as women by looking in the mirror and see how we contribute to those and biases and how we uphold to these patriarchal systems. But we need men to be on board as well. So first we need to educate the men as well, help, because unfortunately probably not all men will do it automatically. You have more and more men thinking differently. But we definitely also need to stand still and look at ourselves in the mirror and see what kind of biases we uphold and keep upholding within ourselves, and look at what the actually effect is of those biases. Like one of the worst ones are actually the gender-based violence. It has to do exactly with those biases and those beliefs in terms of patriarchy and the power relations within societies, and what men still perceive that they have power over women, and that gives them the ability to do. There is a gender equality index that the UN produces, and actually on gender-based violence, 28% of the world population believes that it is okay for a man to beat a woman. That's more than 1/3 of the world population. Okay,
That's
so yes,
crazy.
so this is crazy. So
Yeah.
if the world thinks that way, you know what the advancement is? And I was also saying in that same study shows that 40% of the population thinks that a man is a better executive than a woman, and 50% of the world population believes that men are better leaders than women. Okay, so you can talk of any glass ceiling, right? But it's not only up to us to break the glass ceiling, it's the frameworks, it's those social constructions and the normative frameworks within societies that need to change to break those biases, because otherwise we'll never reach a more equal society.
Equal and just society.
Yep.
Yes. And Paula, maybe you can, as a social scientist, of course, explain that a little bit, right? I mean, we are in a system and it's exhausting, some days more than others. And I have to personally say that I'm a very outspoken person, but there are days when I feel like I'm gonna pick my battles. And then I feel bad with myself too, right? Because then I contributed to it. But it's exhausting. It's not just the men, but it's the women around me, right? Having to explain and explain again why that's not okay. One of the things that I see the most these days is people saying like, yes, I believe in equality, but I'm not a feminist. Or, like this. And I'm just, how much time are you generally putting into understanding what that means? Like I didn't have to, I did it. Put some definitions and like I read them in a podcast episode and I posted them on social media because I feel like,
and kudos to you. I'm so proud of what you do.
It's actually
Why?
a breakthrough, what's happening right now. And we are invited to talk about it, and the university is opening its doors to host a seminar. I've been here 12 years, so I can say it's a breakthrough. And it is a difficult thing because we are socialized a certain way, and I'm in my 50s, and I actually have been socialized and brought up by relatively progressive parents, but also with their history and socialization in another time frame. But it is very important to understand that bias, and I like the fact, and I'm really, really happy that I was invited by you, Carolina, on this topic, because biases are actually the foundation of a lot of the problems and the complications that actually has been elaborated on by Jocelyne fantastically. And I think that it is really important, and I'm teaching this. I'm teaching for the upcoming nurses at the hospital in DVG, and I'm teaching at IPA, and I taught a lot in Curaçao in the Netherlands. I'm teaching that bias, the whole thing with bias is, it is like in Dutch it is vooroordeel. It's the foundation of the perception that you have been brought up by or have been instilled by society. And it's everywhere that really construct your perception of what a woman should be or a man should be. And believe me, it's not and we are talking about gender biases. It's not something that really only diminishes women, also men. And so talking about gender biases, we have to explore and analyze what does that mean, the word gender. You have femininity, you have masculinity. These are constructions that have been, as Jocelyne already said, really filled by what we think a man should be and what a woman should be. And you have feminine energies, you have masculine energy, but a man also can be oppressed or can be really subjected by these gender biases. And we are women, so I'm a woman, I'm going to talk about women. I don't want to come over as have to say something about men. But in the conversation on gender biases, we have to leave some space for men also to take position. And not overpower them, overwhelm them with our concerns or our problems or pains or wounds. And the gender biases are the foundation. What comes after a bias? After the bias, we will have to deal with stigmatization. Stigmatisering, you say in Dutch. And that is actually where the problem lies, that there is this general perception that is being constructed on a whole group of women. And we also know not all women are the same.
Exactly.
But this is the attributes that you really apply to this group, and this is the way you want a woman to be. And the moment that you're not that person, or you are not able to live like that label, you have a problem in a society. And this one, in that you would say paradigm or vertoog, and that is how you should live. And then after the stigmatization, you will get a discrimination. And the discrimination is something that is institutional, that based on the fact that you are a woman and then you have the ability to get children, or you have breast, or your biological setup is like a certain way, then based on that, in a lot of societies still in the world, you will not be able to get the same opportunities in society to develop yourself or your talents and to achieve certain status. And that is also what is actually aligned with femininity of masculinity, prestige and status. And then last but not least, you have this general, after discrimination, exclusion of women out of a certain decision-making process. Well, yesterday, there were some certain moment that it was highlighted how this is actually right now in Aruba. I really liked it. We should really be knowledgeable on this subject in order for us to become more conscious. Because when I came here 12 years ago, I was like, oh my God, there's so many women highly educated. I did not know. I did not know. And not knowing is one of the problems. How do you deconstruct what is holding you back, or what is actually defining the perception of women? And in Aruba, I really felt, well, I thought it's European, or it's just like America, and then you have to get to know the culture, and you have to get to know the history and the tradition. And it is right now that I see this consciousness, this awareness under the younger generation, but also the older generation. Yesterday there was this presentation of Sharon Meyer, who really gave an historical overview, and there's a lot have been done. But as the rector also mentioned when she introduced or opened the seminar, is when we look at Ketanji Brown Jackson, the first African American that will be elected to the High Court?
Supreme Court, yeah.
Supreme Court. It took like 60, 70 years before this nomination by Biden of another lady that had all the credentials. But this is what happens, you open the door. This is what happens, that a lot of progress have been made, but most of the time you don't even know. And then there's this moment and someone else can really continue the tradition or the whole process. So it is time, and in my studies, pipeline is of a critical factor. Sometimes it just takes time and generations, and biases. I can talk about this like for hours. But the whole thing is that it is very important to understand, as I look at the result of my studies, and this is years ago, but still applicable to the situation, also in Aruba, that biases really construct the perceptions also in organizations. And that is actually where my worry is. That not on the labor market, when women are educated, have explored themselves, have achieved a lot, they will hit this glass ceiling. And what is a glass ceiling? It's a metaphor for, in theory, you can achieve everything. You have been educated, you have this network, you have this capital, you are healthy, and then something happens and it just doesn't come to fruition. And what is that? These are perceptions. It's not tangible. It's not tangible. You cannot say, well, someone is discriminating me, but one remark or one body language, and you know already where you are in a lot of organizations. And this is the glass ceiling. You cannot really put the finger on it, but it hurts because you think you have everything. It's not applicable to only women, but also other marginalized group, and we have to talk about that also when we talk about gender biases on LBGG community, and everything is actually locked into the gender bias, also with ethnic or racial discrimination. And what I think that should be really an answer to the question, I'm stopping, is that, I like that very much. Studying race, gender, and class is the intersectional framework that includes all the dimensions of not oppression, but exclusion. And in that way, we can also really understand that we're not only women, but we have our ethnic and cultural and educational background. We're not only men, we also have that. And there are men that are oppressed by women, and there are men that are also excluded because of the fact that they have another ethnic or cultural background. So it's a very complicated reality which we have to deal with also in Aruba. So gender is not only gender anymore. Gender is that thing that is really interwoven with all the other dimensions that actually define you as a person in a society and also in Aruba.
For sure. And you talked about the exclusions and the discrimination that happens, which obviously contributes to that inequality that exists. And like you said, it's not, and like Jocelyne said, it's not just like on the numbers, but on the everyday, intangible, unmeasurable things. What are things that, from obviously all your experience and also analysis of Aruba, what are the types of inequalities that women in Aruba are facing that maybe we are not pinpointing with numbers, for example? Like maybe it's not, it's equally distributed in schools, for example, or even maybe more women are going for higher education. But what are those inequalities that still exist that we are not able to like pinpoint like that?
Okay, well, I'm an outsider within. So this is a question for my colleagues, but I really do believe sometimes an outsider within position has its advantages because you see things and you're able to, from a maybe detached way to really also really see it or mention it or say it, which is not always received very positively. That's the advantage that you have when you have an outsider within. What I really think is that, and I really like your question. It is essential, crucial to understand when you are studying social constructions or framings, is the concept and the notion of everyday lives. And every day, means that it constantly happens. This is our reality. It's not something that incidental happened. This is a constant structural things that has been embedded in society and which actually structures your opportunities in society, defines you in a way. It really fills the perceptions that people, if a person sees me, there is a perception not only that I'm a woman, but also that I'm black, or that I'm speaking Dutch, or that I'm highly educated. Well, that interwovenness of all the mechanisms, that is intersectionality, that defines my reality, it has defined my identity, or even my opportunities. And in Aruba, for sure, because I'm also something else here, which I never really experienced. I'm a migrant. So I'm not from the same culture that is being defined as Aruban. And what does that mean, Aruban? Actually, I just had a discussion. Well, there is one publication that really has the title, Quinta Rubiano, and it's not written by Rubiano. And so there's their discussion. Can he really understand? It's a colleague of mine, Luc Alofs. Can he really understand what the but it is a fragmentation of a lot of cultures and histories and perceptions and realities, everyday realities that ultimately defines what it is to be a Aruban woman. And I think that only Aruban women can say that in conversation with women also living in Aruba that are not defined as Aruban. But what is that? The most of the Arubans that I met, they have a Colombian mother or a Dutch mother or a Yugoslav mother, or this is something that in this global world, in this society, we are locally really intertwined with each other.
Which also brings in like their own biases, right? And expectations. So like you just said, my mom is Colombian, my dad's Dutch, and there are so many conflicting things going on like all of the time because and I do have to say that I am really happy, mom, dad, that they were like very progressive. And I do have to say that anytime I talk to my friends and I complain about something, they're like, nah, like your parents are so cool, you know, even as I was younger. But there's still like those little things, and like you said, that do define you. And in that way of defining yourself, you create like your own identity, which a lot of times, because I don't think we do it intentionally, but unintentionally limits us and adds to that inequality. I mean, because we are expected to behave a certain way.
Yeah, well, women has that. They have, if you would like to generalize, we have to be careful. But women do have that, and I actually see it with myself. I have the tendency. I'm brought up as a certain woman, and I also have a certain upbringing. I don't want to be perceived as difficult.
Ugh, yes.
And I want to be liked.
Yeah.
And I need some people also in my life, so it better be. And I know the mother or the brother or the colleague, and I'm looking at my reputation. And women need to be very careful, because otherwise you will be labeled as a very difficult woman, and especially if you are a little bit verbal talented, or you are highly educated, you will be called a bitch. You will be called
Yes, I love how you're saying that.
And
The
I
way
can
it.
attest to that.
Yes.
And I think, if I may, because you said something about first about the idea. So I have a few things about being a feminist. I think men and women can be a feminist.
Yes.
Being a feminist is just that you really believe in advancement of women.
No,
right?
it's just
And
one thing. Just one thing.
Yeah.
Being a feminist is advances of human being. It's a human right.
Yes.
I just want to add that
Of
to Joyce's
reaching.
definition, and I wanted to say that, but being a feminist is not only for women.
No, of course not.
It's for the whole
Of
population, for society, that you want, what Jocelyne mentioned,
Yes.
a certain equal distribution of power, and that will have an impact for a just, sustainable future and the children of our children.
Yes. Yes. Well, I was going to go to that next. It's okay. So yes, it's very important, and I've confronted with people looking at you, like a feminist, as if, again, putting a value judgment on that. If there's something bad about being a feminist, that makes you a bitch, that makes you like a dreamer, that makes you fluky, that's been in my experience.
It's complejos, eh? You have an issue.
Yeah.
But no, that's
Yes.
If you have a feminist, you have an issue somewhere.
Exactly. Yeah. So there's something wrong. There's a bias against using that term, unfortunately. And I think as well, in terms of, you said, where are some of the biases that we've seen? For instance, so part of the gender policy that has been developed is really a situation analysis of women in Aruba, right? And one of the things, indeed, that was pointed out is the strong biases that are still in our community. And how is that manifested? Not necessarily, yes, in numbers, but for instance, we've seen that over the last few decades, women's education in numbers has really advanced, right? However, that's not necessarily translated into the labor market as of yet, right? So by and large, you still have more men in managerial positions. You still have more men participating in the labor market. You still have more men that are successful indeed as we perceive it in societies. Why do I say it as we perceive it? Because that's a bias, and we still look at success defined by what are the male attributes, right? So that's, again, how we see it. And I say we because it's not only the men, but it's the women as well.
For sure.
You know, and these are indeed, constructed. And we have enough role models, I think, in society. And you would think, okay, that will grab, but that's not enough. It's about looking at yourself, at these biases that are still there and what we can contribute. And it's also about our economy, right? And again, as I said before, the structures. As well, I mean, one of the things that, and we all know, is that the majority of women in our community are employed in the service industry, right? In more low-paying jobs, right? So how do you break that? And why is it so? And how do you educate women? And how do women become more educated? And it's true that also most of the women employed in the service industry are migrants. By and large, are migrants. And what does that mean as well for our society? So as Paula said, it's very hard. So the study shows this, but it's where do you point your finger at? So there are numbers, there are studies, but the studies are also inconclusive because, as Paula says, we don't write things down. Right? Here in Aruba, we don't publish. There are not enough studies made. That last night I said as well, we don't have official statistics on gender-based violence.
Exactly.
On this island. And this is incredible because gender-based violence has such a negative impact on families, on communities. And if you really want to target this problem, and you're doing great work, but the great work that she's doing is not enough. You need to know what it looks like in Aruba, what the numbers really are, in order to enact policy, efficient and effective policy that can make those changes. But it takes, again, a whole of community to garner around making these changes.
And tradition, breaking tradition. There's another thing which is very important that actually Jocelyne is hinting at. First of all, when I came here, when I started to work at EPA, which is actually the teaching training academy for Aruba, and 90% of the students are women. And so what Jocelyne already mentioned, that you will see an uneven distribution of women at certain jobs or sectors. And certain sectors are much more dominated by men, and other more the care and teaching and service industry are much more dominated. But you will see that they will not become managers or directors in those sectors.
Exactly.
I mean, yesterday the rector also said there are not a lot of professors in academia, female professors. They are mostly men. So and they will be portrayed for the power hierarchy and the prestige that comes with being a professor, that has a certain face, has a certain image. So to really break through that kind of perception, it's a difficult path. And then when I came to Aruba and I had to work with a colleague, at a certain moment I just said, but I'm a feminist. And he was like, and we were really collaborating nice, I think. And I just mentioned in a discussion, but I'm a feminist. And he was like, oh my God, are you frustrated? Are you lesbian? Are you what is your problem?
Wow.
And I was completely confronted with the perception that this word gave. So after that, and I really sent him a lot of documents. I don't think that he read it, but I wanted to educate him that my perception or the definition that I have of feminism is a completely one. After that, I never, till now, never said again that I'm a feminist, because I didn't want that label for me on this island, being also a gender expert. And I realized that the traditional definition of feminism is really still living or is still existing. So it's also, for me, it's very difficult to sometimes have this conversation, because I am also coming with some Dutch or Eurocentric perceptions, of approaches to certain. And here, it's a completely different situation. Because in our communities here, there are a lot of female headed households also. So there is a kind of complex perception on women doing things for themselves. It's actually an achievement to be married and to have certain status with that. And there is the crux of the problem. What is the capital power of women? Because one thing that I've learned is that the financial power, the economic power, and Jocelyne mentioned that also, is really a very important thing. When you have capital, when you have the financial vermogen, you are at a different level talking or sitting at a table. And look at what Serena is now doing, giving $1 billion or something on the eradication of discrimination for women in America, in the States. And she can do that because she has that kind of power. When you have that kind of power, you are able to sit at a table with a Bill Gates or with whomever, and that changes the conversation. And that is something that women still have to think about. It's not only education. It's not only getting on the labor market in certain jobs, but it is more than that. It's your network, but it is also your financial power. And that is something that we have to work as a collective to really understand how that works and how you really apply that in order for the position of women to change or to improve. So this is something that we also have to think about, because I am really afraid for a lot of women because of their economic or financial status, for their pensions. And I've learned that women, they will live longer. Men will die because of the stress or whatever earlier still, and we are getting older. We are actually preparing ourselves for the vergrijzing, as they say it in Dutch. And women are not prepared to really get that organized, the pensions or their financial independence taken care of.
And it's playing catch up, right? Because we are still catching up. It's hard also because of the expectations that come with it. But I also think, like you mentioned something very important, how women will work in certain areas and yet they do not they're not the directors of these
No, the thing
organizations.
is, when you're a director or CEO, you have to have a certain kind of prestige, or if you have to understand what also Jocelyne said, how power works. The power dynamic, understanding and applying the power dynamics and how power is defined or perceived is one of the key ingredients to be able to play the game. And not a lot of people, but not a lot of women also do understand how that works, how that functions in the minds of people. If you don't get that, you cannot really play that game, because it is a game. And sometimes it's hurtful, but you have to be able to constantly deal and wheel with people in order for
Navigate.
Navigate, that is.
And that's the thing. And again, it's not necessarily even because there aren't qualified women to do these jobs. But I also see that we are much more forgiving of men. So women will have to have all these amazing titles to even be considered.
Yeah.
And then you'll have a man, and I'm not saying that they're not qualified or whatever, but it's so disproportionate.
Yeah, because they are. You will recognize your dad, and you will recognize your brother, and you will recognize your son, and it's very, very difficult not to love them, but they will do it, and you have to continue because we are here together. That's the whole thing.
I can say, and I actually, I had a really great mentor, and who was the ambassador for the Kingdom of the Netherlands in Washington, D.C. when I was Minister Plenipotentiary there. And I remember Renee Jones-Bos, and she mentioned to us, she had put in a professional network at the embassy.
Very celebrity
together.
diplomat in the Netherlands.
She's great. And I had the privilege of working with her for 3 years. And I remember one thing that she told us, as women, we always will be judged differently. Mm-hmm. As professional women, we always will be judged differently. And the way I deal with that is make sure that I'm prepared 200, 300 times. It takes a lot of effort. It takes more energy to do it. But unfortunately, until we break those glass ceilings, we as individuals, as women professional individuals, probably need to do that, especially if we're dealing in a surrounding with other men, right? After she left, it was my last year, a male ambassador came. And I remember we had one of our ministers coming, and they were going on the hill, on Capitol Hill. We were all going to lobby for a certain issue for Aruba. And so we had a preparatory luncheon with the ambassador. And I asked him, okay, so are you going to go to the points now with him? Because, he has to lead a conversation. He said, I don't know them. I said, oh? He said, no, I'll read them in the car. And for me, that was so telling. A person in the same position, he was like, oh, I'll wing it, and then that what Renee said resounded so much in my head of what we as women professionals do. Do we need to do that? We feel we need to do that because of the way that we're perceived, right? It is. And that's, in a way, you can say it's fair. It's not fair, but it's the truth. It's the reality thus far, and the realities are sometimes really harsh in the way that we're treated differently. And I think, again, in the way it manifests itself, very much so, and I think, I was just thinking how it manifests itself in, and the most gruesome way is in gender-based violence, right? If we go to the extreme.
Yes, and I do want you to share a little bit about that, Genna. Like, we have, it's sad, but I mean the numbers say that gender-based violence is normalized for a huge chunk of the world. We're not even talking about our own specific community, but just a lot of people think that it's justified and it's normalized. How do you deal with that? I mean, you are a advocate, like you are very open about the things that, you believe and you stand for. But when you're working with people who maybe, do not necessarily view things the way you do, how do you deal with that? What do you see and how does it tie back to this?
Okay, so I want to start, for example, like I said before, everything comes back to stereotypes, the roles that men has or what they've been indoctrinated or what we have learned. So as much it is a process of learning, it is also unlearning. Because, for example, we all also have unconscious bias. And it's a continuous work to, diminish those things. And when you were talking, I was thinking about, like, school, how it starts at school, like how my experience, like at basisschool, how it was okay for guys to fight, engage in violence, and how it was okay. It starts also there. Like it is normalized for men to be violent, and it is normalized for women to silence themselves. So they have to be quiet. They have to take on this. Tumatulog kwal ko tawardo hastina nang. And there's also a story that I remember from, for example, from un pareja, no?
Couple.
In the early years, it was taught for the women to, okay, so once you're married for life. No matter what happens to you, you resolve it in the house. And then this person was constantly being battered. And you are taught that you have to take on that, you have to stay in the relationship because for better or for worse. So that includes violence also. So sometimes it's a little bit difficult because you have cultures that still has those ideals intertwined in them. So for the person that is experiencing violence, it could be a little bit. It takes a little bit more time for them to understand and. Also, diminish those concepts and those learned behaviors that was put onto them, because everything we've learned was indoctrinated to us. So it is difficult, but it's not impossible. And you always have to go through the journey with the person. They have to make the choice, and it starts there. So, for example, once you're counseling, once you're doing the sessions with the person, you give them the saying. So if they want to talk, if they want to do something, you guide them, but you don't impose on them, because they start there. They start realizing, okay, I can make my own decisions. I can go my own path, and all those types of things, And I also think that breaking the bias starts at school. Like, I remember when I was in MAVO.
Yes. We're gonna do a picture at the end. But
Okay. I always thought that I'm not good at math, but now I think was I good at math or not good at math, or was I never? I never get the opportunity to, or they didn't invest in me because I'm a woman. Because you're always taught that men, they are better in science, they are better in math, they are better in business, they're more, financial literacy, or all of those things are taught more to them, and there are teachers are more invested in them in those areas. So it's not that the women cannot do those things. It's did we get the opportunity to be taught those things, to reach our full potential?
But that is also part of your upbringing. I mean, in my studies, it was very clear, and I interviewed 125 women working in the private and then governmental sector. There were 5 factors that has been identified for their success, whatever that may be. But I make a definition of a division between working women and career women. So there's a difference in definition if you just work because you need an entry and you want to vertically also make some advancement. And one of the things that really came out was the upbringing is actually crucial. If you have parents that really think that education or being financial independent is important, that will reflect your attitude. And still, even now, and I'm working at IPA, and I'm teaching students, and I give them research assignment on gender, which they love. And then it is very clear that there are not a lot of, for the male student, it's difficult.
Yes.
When we talk about gender, it's very difficult to be working in a sector that is dominated by women, and where childcare is really seen as something for women. So they actually feel discriminated, and they are labeled maybe as gay or too feminine or too soft. So they have to actually also, they are faced with barriers. And mothers, but particularly fathers, are very important in this regard for women. And that when the father has an ambitious daughter, you will see that his attitude in the work field will also change for younger women. And he will see himself as a mentor for women. He will understand that struggle. And another thing was that one of the findings said that women that made it, whatever that is, they said the one thing that they had to learn and they had to accept is that you have to be able to work and play with men. You have to be really relaxed and a little bit nonchalant to be able to position yourself in this old boys network or in this male world, because that is just the reality in certain organizations. If you're not able to laugh or not able to throw things away that has been thrown to you, you will not survive, or they will not accept you or celebrate you in certain positions. So you have to be able to a little bit frivolity
Yes.
deal with all these things. Otherwise, you cannot. And then the last thing, what you said, at school, it starts at school.
In the
All
house,
our
actually, also.
notions and
starts
all our
In the house,
social
yeah.
structures, it starts at home and at school. And we see it also in the primary education system here in Aruba. It's the foundation. It's not something that is really a huge problem, but it is there. It is in a sense that you have to deal with it,
Yes.
because that is everyday reality. But it is something that is there. And if you have parents or you are being brought up a certain way, then you can just live with it, you know?
Well, I think, to go back to what you said, I think indeed you said you at school, but I think first of all, it's about parenting. You know, it's a great part is parenting,
Yes.
and it's about school and it's about media. Media plays such an incredible, important role. And Carolina,
Carolina, this
I
is
really,
such...
no, I really admire you because I follow you and I see what you post and that you put effort in that. And I wanted to tell you that, I really, really admire you because I think the younger generation has such an important role to play in this, and that you have taken it upon yourself to really try to educate and make a difference. High five. High 10 to you.
Can we do the
No,
high five?
excellent. Because, yes, no, excellent. Because you see, see the extreme of this. I've seen that. I worked in projects in Bangladesh with acid burn victims, with rehabilitation of, trafficked women, etc. But you work on this island and you see it. You see it. So you know where it comes from, right?
And that's when Paula says about the intersectional lens. That's why I always like to call myself like a feminist, but I'm an intersectional feminist.
Yes.
Because the struggles or the oppression that I experience being a woman, you face it differently than I do. So it's not the same. We don't have the same path. So we need different, they say about equality and equity. So it's like that,
Yeah. But the thing is that is common. We are women everywhere, and we have this responsibility because we are able to bring life forth.
Exactly.
And we are regarded in most societies as a second-class citizen still. And that you will see that not legally or but in opportunities and in the history. And we have come a long way. But we're not there yet. And I think that the intersectional framework is an answer, it is an approach that we can use for all women to have, to be acknowledged.
Exactly.
Without being neglecting the ethnicity or the culture or the language or how you, being handicapped or your sexuality or whatever. Being acknowledged. And that should also include men.
Yes.
Exactly. Because in order to reach the gender equality, we need to involve men and boys.
Of course.
We cannot do it without them.
No.
Exactly.
No, the conversation is with them.
Exactly, exactly.
So we are sitting here as women, but I also know I have to do this with my fantastic friends, male friends, family members, colleagues that I love working with and sometimes prefer, because there's another thing that we did not mention. Women can be very, 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 very difficult to work with, in a sense. We also have
Work
to
with, but putting each other down. I mean, my experience has been that in my life, I've been the people who have put me down structurally, and I even have my daughters know this. There is a person that they call Madame Bully because has bullied me. A woman in position of power, and I've only been bullied by high-powered women.
Exactly.
And it's hurtful in a way, and you get over it, But when it happens, it's really shocking, and they kind of look. I always say this: we all have our strengths.
Yes.
Everybody. We all have our weaknesses. And we have to learn to act according to our strengths and accept that and accept the strengths of others and also the weaknesses. Our brains are different. We don't choose them. We're born that way, and yes, we can be socialized in certain ways, and we can as well educate ourselves in certain areas, but there are certain things that's the way we are. And the first thing is acceptance, right?
Exactly.
Of what you are, but also look at yourself in the mirror, what that means. And unfortunately, in my experience, it's been mostly women that instead of pushing you up, helping you to grow, wants to point out on things that they perceive, it's not you, as a weakness because of their own biases, right? Because they want to step on you because it's like, don't compete with the queen.
I was going to say that.
Don't overshadow
Yes.
the queen, and unfortunately, I've had that. And I must say, I've worked as long internationally as here. I've had that in my own country, Aruba.
Yes.
Happened to me
But
twice
it's
greatly,
everywhere.
and it's everywhere. I know,
everywhere.
but as
In
an
the Netherlands,
Aruban
in
woman,
Curaçao,
it's hurtful. I'm
Yes.
seen. I'm you've
As a
been lauded.
threat, you're a threat. You're a and
Yeah.
I really think in the findings also of my work, what was an eye-opener to me, that all the respondents, most of them said, Paula, the most difficult experience I had was with women. We can talk about men, but if we are not able to really uplift each other, collaborate with each other,
Correct.
and the most, they said, the most, how do you say that? Knives in your back? That I got are from women gossiping and
Same
not taking
here.
me serious. When I'm in a position, they don't acknowledge me. And when I'm so all these stories have been told. And I was very young. I realize now, after all these professional experiences that I, especially in particular in Aruba, got, that everything that they told me, I was like, huh? I was like in a cloud nine. And now I have experienced that from different angles in the Netherlands, Aruba, and Curaçao, in the States even. And that is actually the most confrontational thing you have to deal with when you're busy with gender. And that leads to one thing: we are human. So I am actually now in this process that I am like, okay, do I like you as a person? What are your norms and values? What is your, what do you bring at the table? How do you deal with us? What is your professional experience? What are your values? How do you treat other people? And then I don't care if you're a man or a woman, black, white, green, purple, but I can work with you.
Yes.
But it does have an impact. Society is in a certain way organized. And I also understand now the pain, because probably she had to go through a lot to get there. Nobody helped her, or not sufficiently. And there she sits. And then you come and you are like, okay, I'm doctor. And I know this already. Who are you? That's how she perceives it. And I'm like, you have to help me because you're in that position. So there are very difficult, complicated things going on.
Yes.
And women actually have to be coached, have to be helped, have to be informed, knowledgeable about other people.
Equipped with the tools, the necessary tools.
And not be afraid, because I'm not interested in that, and I don't have that power.
And that's the thing. I mean,
I don't.
I think as women, we have, we go through so many situations of having to justify ourselves constantly that it translates into so many relationships, right? And especially at work, because I get it, to some extent, it is a threat, not necessarily a threat, but, by doing something differently, you could be pointing out something that was not working well. But like Jocelyne said, it doesn't necessarily have to be a big problem. You just have to be willing to acknowledge it, which also comes with a lot of self-awareness. And that is something that is scary for a lot of people. And, like what you just said, and not everybody has the patience, the gentleness to guide somebody through that process. So a lot of people just don't do it. And then they'll continue these actions that they're so unaware of. If you point it out, they get offended. Then you're immediately labeled the difficult one because you did not accept a behavior that is, normalized.
Exactly.
Or
Exactly.
Perceived
But the thing
as
is,
normal.
it's not only, it's also being knowledgeable about your history. Women do have a shorter history on the labor market. And because of that competition almost. Men have the same kind of issues, but they're much longer on the labor market. They know how to deal with jealousy and the whole game. They know they own the game. And women, they are only 30, 40 years active on the labor market completely. So it's still a threat. So if you see one there, it's like, okay, what happened, And she's afraid. And so you have to understand it in a broader sense of societal history and also the history of gender relations.
And what you said, I mean, I hear it way too often. It bothers me every single time when people say something like, but you have to go through the struggle too, right? As if like sharing knowledge or like I will know people that will not share knowledge because they feel that the other person needs to go through I don't know what to figure it out themselves. And I think it's such a toxic trait, but I hear it from well-educated people, men and women, people that I consider to be really nice people, and then I'm surprised with that. So it's very much there.
Bijna normaal, zeg je in het Nederlands, hè? Bijna, it's normaal. Wat je meemaakt, of what you're going through, Paula, that's part of the game. And I'm like, okay,
Doesn't mean that I have to accept it, or doesn't mean that I can't come and say, like, actually,
why
no.
does it have to be like that?
Yes.
It's about
Yes.
questioning it.
Why do we
You
have
need
to
question that game?
uphold it? And I do want to say thank you because you said that you appreciate the effort that I put, and I said that last week too when I was talking with Mandy and Jocelyne, that, and we all share that because we are very vocal in our opinions, but it's scary. It's I was telling Genna that too. I mean, I do not get a lot of people that backlash at me, which I appreciate, and I tell this during episodes too sometimes, like I'm not gonna accept like mean comments, and I'm not gonna do that. But I do hear through people that I am labeled a certain way, that I am what Paula was saying, that I have like, I don't know, some frustrations, but why is she like that? I mean, she has a job and she is so active and she participates in so many things. Like, why does she still feel like she needs to? And it's not just about me.
Exactly.
It's not just about me. I am in a privileged position in so many different ways, my upbringing, these are, and I am aware of that and aware enough that I'm also going to use that privilege for the betterment of us all. Because I hate that we have to sell it this way, but I always tell people a more diverse and inclusive world will benefit everyone, period. So even if you do not see how it impacts that particular group, how that particular group is being left behind or marginalized or whatever, fine, then at least do it for yourself, if that's the motivation you need. But it's so hard to even let people understand that. I mean,
you know what, and you're an inspiration to me in that. Because I must say again, bringing it back to Aruba, and that's been from young, my commitment. And I feel that, sometimes, I had been at it for years, and that you get tired, right? As you grow older of this. But also I think by when you're isolated, in certain ways, or when they isolate you in certain ways purposefully, in terms of what you do, and that has a very negative impact. And I've been going as well, through a journey, and I said, you know what? Yes, I am in a privileged position, and I've been doing a lot, and I do a lot behind the scenes, and I'm better at that than maybe at the forefront. But you know what? When I see people like you, I said, you know what? I think probably we need more people who are willing also to step to the forefront. You know, and I see that. I see like, wow, I see you guys. I'm like, wow, great to this younger generation, you know, and sometimes I think...
As we speak right now.
Wow. And I said, you know what?
Conference.
I said, why, you know...
We have to shout out for them also.
Yeah, they're great, you know, and I really admire...
Otherwise,
and
I was
I'm like,
there, not here.
and I'm like, what do I have to add?
Sorry, Caroline.
You know, sometimes I think, what do I have to add? But it's like, you know, and I said that yesterday, you know, never make yourself small and always think you have to add. And we're a part of a community.
Yes.
We're part of the society and you live in a society. And I feel that it's part of contributing to the next generation. And it's about, you know, the common good. And it's about creating a more capital for everybody, a more positive
and a seat at the
world.
table.
And a seat at the table, because we all need that. And it's indeed, it's highly needed. And I feel that, you know, I always say it's like, and I think we had this conversation before, you know, about being kind of like a wereldverbeteraar. And not everybody understands that. And I think because as well that we live in the society, I will just bluntly say it, that's so politicized as well. You know, it's like, it's very difficult to uphold, you know, or to push forward the fact that you are there for a common good, you know, that's what you're there. You're not there for one party or the other, especially in my position, but you're there for Aruba, you know, and it's not because you work for a government that, you know, you have. And in my experience, I've seen so much. I mean, I've had the privilege to work in Africa and Asia, and you really see the beauty and also the ugliness of society, that you see, okay, let's, you know, society needs all of us. Society, and we can all contribute if we have the opportunity. And I feel that it's a responsibility to contribute if I can. And I have the privilege, and I'm in a privileged position to do so.
Not only privilege, I think you have a kind of responsibility.
Exactly.
As a citizen, and I teach these classes, as a citizen, you have a kind of moral obligation to contribute. And if you're aware, I was privileged in my upbringing. I had parents that were highly educated. They actually were like, you should have an education, you should be able to be financially independent if something happens with it. But all the three of us, they were like that. And my mother was one of the first feminists. And she really said that my two daughters, they need to have education and no boyfriend still. It's a little bit, for me, it really went to the other extreme. But no, it's a joke. Got that.
We can't.
You cannot?
No, we cannot.
Are you kidding me? Okay. But the thing is that I really think that it is very important. And what you said, Carolina, is media has a certain kind of responsibility with that.
Yep.
So what Jocelyne is saying, congratulating you or acknowledging you, I mean, you actually perpetuate certain kind of images and perceptions. You create the images and the perceptions. And I think that a female reporter or journalist, they know it. And I have female journalist friends in particular, and they have sometimes another angle. They have another perspective, and that will really be discussed in society, in a community. And in that sense, it is very important that these kind of conversations are being organized, initiated, coordinated by women or men that are feminists. Because I really believe I had a dad that is a feminist.
Yes.
Yeah. But it is a sense of a kind of concept that you are dealing with human beings that should be treated equal. Exactly. And fairly portrayed.
Yes. Yes.
In everyday reality.
Yes. And, you know, like we said, we can talk about this for hours, and I do not think that we even within this series will discuss everything that I would like us to discuss. But I really do hope that, you know, if you're listening and that you heard things that encourage you to learn more, and, you know, that you feel curious, because, you know, I was talking today to you and a bunch of things popped in my mind that I also want to read more about. And, you know, let me think a little bit further on that. Like you were saying, like that gentleness to, you know, it's hard sometimes to be willing to walk that walk with somebody. But it's a process.
Yes.
And I appreciate all of you for the work that you do, because it's so important. And I don't think maybe we will necessarily see like the full effects of the things that we are doing. And I'm going to say we. But please continue the good work. So I usually give kindness cards to my guests, but because it's like Wednesday and stuff, so I talked to Nanette of Words and Papiamento, and she had like these really cute pencils, and I just love it. And it says Sigi Bria, because I think that you should never make yourself small for anybody. And it says Mujer Maravilloso. Y camina ting gente mujer ting magia. And I do believe that. I do believe that where there are women, there is magic. And that all of you sitting here are marvelous women and that you should continue to shine. So I hope to continue these talks. Jocelyne, we're definitely going to talk next week about specific issues regarding Aruba and, you know, how we're going to move forward, who we need on board. So I did take the paper yesterday with me and I was looking at it, and I love how so many types of organizations are, you know, mentioned in there, things that we may not necessarily directly think would contribute, or so I want to discuss that as well. And Paula, what you said, that we all have that responsibility, and I like how that is, you know, we all have a responsibility to make this a better place. Speak up, you know, if you see an injustice. I want you to speak up, and let me know. I still have one, I think the last episode of the women's series that I still have open up for suggestions, and if not, I'm gonna fill it. But I mean, if there is an issue that you really, really want me to talk about, let me know, because I really want to know what you want to know about. So ladies, these are for you. Thank you for coming today.
Thank you so much for the invitation, Carolina. It was
Thank
such an honor
you.
and pleasure. I feel really,
Thank you.
yeah, honored and privileged to be within this group, with Jocelyne and with Genna and with you. Well, part of the whole discussion on gender biases has to deal also with inclusiveness and to include all of us.
Yes.
And so this is one of the first steps.
Yes. No, thank you for accepting.
Thank you, and it's thank you again. It was for me also very inspiring, and I hope as well to the audience. And as you say, that you know, we are on a path to keep learning and to make better versions of ourselves, and to see how we can contribute to forming a better world with our input.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
I also want to thank you for this opportunity.
Yeah.
I know.
Thank you for accepting.
Since it's the first time ever.
So this took a lot of convincing, and I want all of you to know that getting Genna here took a lot of convincing and like time extensions and everything. Okay, so I just feel like you guys should know that.
Because I'm pretty vocal, because I'm very passionate about human rights, but I'm more on my platform, like my Instagram, and it took a little bit convincing for me to be here, be in front of the camera. But I've learned a lot, and it's such a privilege to be here with all of you today. And I hope this is not the last one.
No,
like I
yes.
said, I will do it with fear and learning, and I will get better.
Yes, yes.
I just want to encourage everybody listening to be conscious of your own unconscious bias. Try to educate yourself a little bit more, and also understand that it's a process. So don't be hard on yourself. Be compassionate with yourself, and you will get there. We will all get there.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Very nice.
Thank you so much indeed
Thank you for being
that.
here.
Yes.
I
Yes.
hope you feel more relaxed.
And believe
Don't-
me,
don't-
the fear never goes away.
I always start trembling after the talk.
Then I was so nervous as Carolina. I was also nervous, so I was texting Carolina.
And I was so surprised too. I mean that you were that nervous. I'm like, but
every time.
really? Okay.
Every time it's a
It's
new
good
moment.
to hear that. I feel really.
Thank you
All
so
right.
much,
Step up.
Carolina.
Yes.
Despite
Which is
whatever
Yes.
you feel.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I should thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So remember, tune in next week. It's a topic that relates to our situation here in Aruba, things that are happening on our island. Okay, this gender policy is very interesting. So don't miss it. Share this episode with people in your life, especially if you want them to hear some things and maybe encourage them to also, talk about these issues, start conversations. Like Genna said, be gentle with yourself too, because sometimes I have realized that some things are triggering to ourselves when we realize that we have participated in something that's not right. But so be it. Do the work, because it's work. So do the work, be aware, and thank you so much once again to my awesome sponsors and Sopi Mix Studio for allowing me to have these conversations, because this started, and Genna was telling me she wants to start a platform. Genna, it started in my living room with pajama pants, and some weeks I was like, no, I don't want to do it this week because, it's too much, and I don't know how I feel. Then I talked to Jeff, and he convinced me to do something more structured, but I'm happy I do it. Some days are easier than others, and I appreciate that the work is being seen. I love that my audience is very diverse in the sense of generations. Shout outs to the Gen Z. I absolutely love what they're doing on social media and being loud and proud, and please continue to do that. You inspire me so much as well. And you encourage me to not be, too concerned about what people think, right?
Exactly.
So thank you. Have a nice week. And remember, tomorrow is Women's Day. Wear purple. If you want to, you don't have to. But wear purple. And talk about it.
Oh, I also want to invite everybody. Tomorrow there will be for International Women's Day at Centro de Barrio Dakota, my barrio. We will be celebrating all the women, the hard work they've done to be here today, to present themselves, taking up space. So I want to invite everybody in the community of Aruba to stop by at Centro de Barrio, and let's show our women that we are here, and we are here to support them, and that we are proud of them.
Yes.
There will be food, arts, belleza, everything.
Yes.
From 10 to 5.
All right. And I will get back to you. We'll have a little chat about that.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much. This
Thank
was
you.
Sincerely
Thank you.
Carolina.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Di
Carolina.
nada. See you all next week. Bye.
Sincerely Carolina is powered by Lindy Boutique, Proframe, Gelatissimo, Neutrogena, and Purina.